What was the most epic comeuppance you've ever seen a spoiled kid get? I guess the situation is epic to me, because it seems like spoiled kids always win. I took my kids to a children's museum when they were toddlers. There was a specific area for toddlers with a whole grocery store set up. Such is life. There was a 8 or 9-year-old kid in the toddler area being a pain in the butt. He kept taking all of the kids' toys, hoarding all the shopping carts. He would hand out a few pieces of food to the kids but mainly wouldn't let them touch or play with anything else. Now, normally I would let my own badass kid deal with the situation. He doesn't take crap from anybody, but they started getting into it when this kid got on my son's nerves, and then the older kid hit my son. Done. I went over to the kid, got right up in his face and said, "No, we do not hit. Get out." Instant tears. Dropped all the toys and left the play area. His mom caught the tail end of the scene and tore him a new one. What is wrong with you? I can't turn around for 2 minutes, and then some other parent has to come in and tell you to behave. Unfortunately too little too late for that one. Nice that she backed you up, though. Many parents in my area go mental if you attempt to stop their snot-nosed brats turning into criminal adults. Ooh, I've got a fun one. This one, I handled myself. I waited tables in a breakfast diner a few years back. 2 ladies come in and tow one of their kids along. A chubby boy with gold chains and a nice watch. Kid is probably 10-11. For reference, mom is clearly very tired of dealing with him as he is very demanding. Blurts out what he wants before I can say hi, etc. Partway through the meal, he holds up his Sprite cup and shakes it at me and utters only the word "more." Mom looks aghast and chastises him for being rude, to which he begrudgingly apologizes. I shrugged and told him, "Don't apologize to me, apologize to your mom." Was a little worried when I came back around with his Sprite and saw his salty, hot hairs streaming down his chubby face. Mom left me a 10 on a $30 bill, however, so I think she was happy with my service. This was the best response you could have given. I played football in the local kids league. One kid from another team was basically untouchable as his dad was a major sponsor of the league and would donate money for uniforms, drinks, etc. His son was a pretty good receiver, but didn't like getting hit, and his parents made a big deal of leaving their son alone so he can develop his skills. He was insufferable. Anytime he scored a TD, he would do over-the-top celebrations and mock all the other players, his teammates included. Then came high school. Most of the kids from the league ended up in one of 2 schools. He went to mine, and some other players. During tryouts, he did well. The coaches were mostly focused on skills and minimal contacts during the first few rounds of cuts. The final round was when things got interesting. Full contact was permitted and he got rocked over and over again. No one was actually trying to tackle any harder than normal. It's just this dude didn't know what to do when he got tackled. So he screamed and cried a lot. He didn't make the team until his dad came down to the school and offered to donate money for uniforms and some other goodies for our sports teams. So he made the team, and again we were told to take it easy on him a bit. So we did, but the other teams didn't. And he went up against some of the players he mocked previously, and they remembered. Our QB kept passing to him, and he was getting repeatedly smashed. Over and over again. It was the only time our team cheered for the other team. He quit playing football after that. Actual school of hard knocks. I went on a bush walk in Singapore and there are pretty clear signs around not to feed the monkeys as they can get aggressive. Anyway, there were these 2 boys around the age of 8 swearing and throwing sticks and rocks at a little monkey in a tree. The dad was standing there laughing and allowing this to go on. I was about to say something when one of the kids ripped open a bag of Skittles and started throwing them. The monkey immediately ran down from the branch and snatched the Skittles. At the same moment another 3 monkeys came out of nowhere and in an epic display of monkey justice, swarmed the kids, making them and the dad run away for dear life. Never mess with monkeys. I used to work at a women's shelter. Christmas time rolls around and a man and his sourpuss teenage son comes to the door. He says his son would like to donate some items to the kids staying at the shelter. Great. The man and his son start hauling in some expensive items. There was an Xbox, a bunch of games, a flat screen, iPad, cool headset, etc. Turns out the kid ran his mouth and the dad made him give everything to the kids. Christmas was pretty cool for our gang that year. Wow, I think I actually know this kid and his dad, because I heard the other side of the story, which was son texted a friend telling them how crappy his parents were for not being able to buy him the Xbox he wanted. His parents had already bought the Xbox, but then dad saw the texts and decided kid didn't deserve the gift, so I wonder if we're talking about the same people. When I was 12, my dad dated a nice lady with a bratty 9-year-old who would talk back to and refuse to do chores, which would then be passed to me. One day at the dinner table, everyone is eating and he goes listen and rips a tiny fart. His mom is embarrassed and asks him to stop or go to the bathroom. Instead he spreads a crap eating grin and leans in to rip one loose and accidentally shoots himself mid-dinner. His expression of horror was the best thing ever. I died laughing as he ran clutching his butt away from the table. The reason why he continually talked back and didn't do his chores is because he knew that would just be hoisted onto you. I don't blame your dad for that, but I 100% blame that kid's mom. I worked as an outdoor camp instructor. One week I was on logistics and had to drive the van to lick up kids. I had heard from my friend that one of the kids in his group was a little crap, back-chatting, lazy, bullying other kids. When I got to the pickup point, the kids hopped into the van and my mate and shotgun. My mate Mitch gave me the rundown of the kid. As I started the van up, I did a visual check of seatbelts and everyone was good, except for the kid. I asked, he said no. I told him I can't leave until he puts it on. So he did and I started to leave. A minute down the road I heard him unclip his seatbelt again, so I had to stop the van and ask him again. He put it back on. This happened one more time. On the third time I just pulled over, turned the van off, radioed base and asked for my manager and the overseeing teacher, who was his dean, to come up and pick this kid up because he was a danger to the others in the van. That's when this kid started pleading and begging. Told him no. I already made the call. He got sent home. My mate Mitch had one of his best weeks after this kid left. One time I wouldn't give my daughter a push on the swing because she was whining instead of asking. She knows we don't listen to whining, but her grandpa was there, so she was testing me. When she figured out I really wasn't going to do it, she grabbed the rope from the swing and flung the swing at me. It missed me, came back and smacked her right in the face. I'm sure it hurt too because it was a board with a rope through the middle. Not that I'm happy that my kid was hurt over it, but I taught her about karma that day. She also learned about the laws of motion, equal and opposite reactions. I think I was around 9 or so and I made friends with another kid down the road. Was his grandparents' place and he visited a lot. If I remember correctly, we met through baseball. He was incredibly overweight and bossy. He always made the rules of the games we played and would throw major tantrums if I objected. For instance, while playing with action figures, I had the toy do some cool flips. He went crazy saying how it needed to be realistic. The first time I visited his house I was blown away by the volume of toys he had. Growing up fairly poor, I was accustomed to having maybe one cool toy. He had all the PlayStation games and a huge collection of anime VHS. Not surprising. His parents were overweight as well and would make dense butt dinners that would take me 2 days to recover from. Eventually one sleepover he wanted to play wrestle. Didn't take but a second to know how bad of an idea that is. Him being 100 lbs plus. Especially since he wanted us to be shirtless. I refused and he cried, telling me to take my shirt off and to wrestle. I remember walking out and asking his mom for a ride home. She just gave me the look of I understand. 2 days later he shows up at my house asking for me to come out. My brother told him I wasn't home as I walk by the kitchen. He flipped his crap and that's the last I heard of him. I didn't know you were friends with Eric Cartman. On the first day of a 2-week vacation, I saw my spoiled 10-year-old cousin tell his mother, his older female cousin, his aunt and his grandmother that he wasn't going to clear his place or rinse his dishes because that's women's work. For the rest of that 2-week vacation, nobody had to lift a finger to clear a plate, rinse a dish or wash a pot because it was his job. At times there were over a dozen of us there. LOL. Perfect punishment. I guess I'll start. Definitely not the best, but it still pleased me. I used to work at a pony camp that catered to rich kids from a very nice neighborhood. We would have really spoiled kids all the time. While annoying, the most frustrating part is trying to maintain authority just so the little shoots don't get themselves killed by 1,000 pounds animals. Anyways, We had a maybe 10 years old kid from some mildly famous sportscaster one week. Kid was just downright awful. She ignored everything we told her and was mean to the other kids in camp. At one point she started a physical fight with another girl, and when she felt like she was getting beaten she started yelling, "Do you know who my mom is? I'm going to tell her." The other kid got scared and started crying. My co-worker replied, "Actually, I do know your mom and I know she wouldn't like to hear about this. Why don't I call her right now?" Little brat didn't believe her, so my co-worker did. She was much easier to deal with the rest of the week. Turns out, my co-worker worked with her mom many times over the years. She's a professional makeup artist for TV and did her makeup more than a few times. Suck it, spoiled brat. If someone said, "Do you know who my parent is?" I would punch them again regardless. Used to work at an overnight summer camp and after school program and week-long soccer camp. The town isn't huge, so needless to say over a few years I got to know several kids from different programs. One 10 years old boy I knew from after school care was a total prick. Bully. Snob. Didn't think he had to listen. Tattletale. Personal pet peeve. Just awful. He came to my soccer camp and proceeded to make fun of a 8-year-old girl cause she had old cleats where he had the newest Nikes and a brand new cool design ball. Unfortunately for him, I also knew this 8-year-old girl and knew that the reason her cleats looked old and worn down is that she was a motherfucking beast. Just all around amazing athlete who loved soccer and played hours every day. I paired him with her for a simple drill where one person started with ball and you just tried to get past the other person and kick the ball at stationary ball cone about 10 yards away to simulate passing, scoring accurately while under pressure. He was of course angry, saying she was too young and a girl. I said if he hit the cone 3 times he could pick his partner. He again pointed out her shoes to me as if that were going to change my mind before jiving in and playing. She proceeded to humiliate him over the next few minutes, not once letting him dribble past her in 5 attempts. He was livid, bending down messing with laces as if the shoes really mattered, then saying he needed to use his ball. Nothing worked. He was so angry I thought he was going to be violent, but then it was her turn to be on offense. He talked some kind of smack, I forget what, and refused to let her use his ball. She didn't say a word, got his new ball. I blew whistle and she did a step over fake which made him move to the side. She stood back up straight and kicked it between his legs and hit the cone. She barely even moved. He was so freaking angry. Second round he charged her screaming. She kept her cool, wound back like she was gonna drill it at his dumb face. He ducked and squealed as she dribbled around him with his hands still covering his head and hit the cone. I didn't make her embarrass him for the remaining 3 attempts and called a water break. The kid was just dumbfounded. He honestly thought his shoes were going to make him better without any effort. He was better behaved the rest of the week, but honestly I think she just broke his spirit. He just seemed out of it. Hope he's doing alright. The girl is like an all-American HS soccer player last I checked. Won't be surprised if I see her in Olympics one day. Your boss for doing that. 10/10 coaching. Not incredibly epic and not much of a comeuppance, but great nonetheless. I was on a flight from Washington Dulles to Heathrow. This 6-8-year-old kid behind me was screaming the whole overnight flight, constantly bitching at his mom for food, toys, what the heck ever. Mum was the SHHHH honey, no honey, SHHH sweetheart type. Finally the mom had to get up to use the restroom. The kid starts wailing. The guy next to me leaned up over his seat, turned around, and said, "Hey, kid, shut the frick up." The whole plane didn't clap, but we enjoyed 5 minutes of dead silence till mom came back. Like you said, not too epic, but one of the more satisfying ones. This one was told to me by my parents since I was too young to remember at the time. The neighborhood bus stop for the Catholic high school was on the corner where our house sits. Sometimes when it was raining the kids would wait right next to our house for cover. That didn't bother my parents. They had kids, they didn't want somebody else's kids standing out in the rain. What did bother them was when they realized the kids started passing the time by ripping up all the flowers around the house. Parents called the school to complain and had a nice chat with the principal. That Saturday all the kids who used that stop showed up to replant the flowers, which they or their parents paid for. When the flowers were replanted they got to spend a few more hours helping with our other yard work. Then the school moved their bus stop to the main road on the edge of the neighborhood. That meant about 2 more blocks of walking every day for most of them and waiting in a field with no shelter from bad weather. Props to the school for really cracking down on that. Was at a family event for my girlfriend of the time. One of her cousin's kids was just running around making a ruckus in spite of the numerous times his parents told him to settle down. Eventually he took an interest in the motion activated Glade air freshener on a counter. It had been turned off because it would be spraying non-stop with all the people around. So this little 6-year-old crap is standing on his tiptoes ignoring the constant warnings of don't touch that, please, and reaching over pushing buttons, and eventually it happens. He flips the switch to on and 3 seconds later gets a direct blast of Glade to the face. I worked at Taco Bell in HS. At the time, we had kids meals. This kid comes in with his parents and orders a kid's meal. Apparently, he had been in recently and already had that toy. He started screaming at me to get him another toy. His dad looked at me with an absolutely dejected look on his face and begged me to go get the toy. I dug through the new box of toys and found one. The kid ripped it out of my hands and ran outside, directly into a rose bush. My co-worker was legit laying on the ground laughing. That kid sounds like a little prick. I was at the park with my brother's wife and their daughter, my niece, and oversaw this exchange. A young kid, probably around 5'7", was being obnoxious. Every 15 minutes or so, his grandparents, I assume, would gather his toys and bring him over to their bench and put him in timeout for a few minutes. He threw tantrums, but they would completely ignore him when he screamed and calmly ask him if he was finished. Timeout didn't start until he stopped crying. He would go back to playing, then get all wound up, and end up in timeout again. This happened 3 or 4 times in the hour-ish we were at the park. Finally, he made a little girl cry by taunting her that she didn't have a certain toy and he did. I think it was a Minecraft thing. The grandparents calmly walked over, took the toy from him, gave it to the little girl, and they left the park. The boy lost his absolute crap the whole time they were leaving. Grandparents who will never end up discussed and are just normal. Boy Scout camp out in Utah when Boy Scouts were pretty much run by the Mormon church. A porcupine walked through our camp and this spoiled rich kid got a stick and chased it up a tree. We all told him to stop. He wouldn't listen. Scout leaders were off doing God knows what at the time. So this porcupine is up the tree and now the spoiled weenie wants to shoot hard candy out with his wrist rocket. He can't get a clear shot so he climbs up the tree and sits on a branch under the porcupine. Shoots hard candy at the porcupine and hits it hard. It was right then that he learned that when a treed porcupine feels threatened, it just lets go and lets the quills break the fall. The big bud porcupine fell right onto the spoiled kid's shoulder, bounced off, hit his thigh and then landed on the ground. It waddled away and we just laughed at the now howling spoiled kid. One of the scout leaders had to drive the kid to an emergency room. I hope he caught heck for not supervising too. Till porcupines can climb trees. Didn't witness it personally, but I went to high school in a super affluent area and a few years after I graduated a bunch of kids got busted because a kid paid his tutor for a flash drive with key swiping code, stole several teachers' passwords, and changed his and his friends' grades in the system. They made the argument in their defense that it wasn't their fault because they were so wealthy and used to being handed things that they didn't know how to work for them afloons and whatnot. Got expelled, made national news for being arrogant douchebags, and all the other districts in the area argued over who would take them, because nobody wanted to. Few years later my alma mater made national news again when a prom draft ring was exposed, where guys would get together and have a fantasy football style draft over who got to take whom to prom. It was exposed after a girl complained to administration that she didn't want to go with a guy who picked her in the draft, and the guy threw a hissy fit because apparently he paid off a bunch of people to get first pick and thus felt he owned her on prom night. Everyone in the draft was suspended and or banned from prom. If I remember correctly, arrogant rich kids are the worst. I was about 15. I was in the woods with some friends, local public nature reserve, playing on a rope swing, drinking energy drinks and eating snacks, chatting, just having a good time keeping to ourselves really. The rope swing itself was on a very tall tree, hanging over what I can only explain as a miniature valley, 2 small hills, A gap in the middle, rope swing on one side but will reach the other side. Then some kids came along on their bikes, maybe between 10-12, dressed up in tracksuits and quite mouthy, you know the type. They told us to move along from their rope swing. It wasn't theirs. I set that thing up myself because I was like a Spider-Man kid back then. I could climb anything. Obviously we said no, but we did say we'll leave them to it for a bit if they want to have a go. There's no reason we can't all enjoy it. They wouldn't take that answer, so we carried on playing on the rope swing. But then they begun throwing sticks and rocks at us. Didn't faze us. Next thing, one of them tries to show off and speeds down the hill on his bike to try and grab me while I swing. But his mate throws a stick at the same time and it lodges in his wheel and sends him flying down the hill. To add insult to injury, he flies right in my swing path and gets 2 knees to the ribs. Completely took the wind out of him. And so they all left feeling defeated. It feels good because we did nothing out of order. The cards just worked in our favor. Not the greatest, but it felt amazing in the moment. We moved into a newly built neighborhood when I was 10, so everyone there had just moved in within about a year. There were a handful of us that were the same age, so we were all trying to make friends with each other at the same time. All of us were on the low end of middle class except for one kid, who was the youngest in his family, and his dad had just gotten a 7-figure dismemberment settlement from an accident. He got whatever he wanted from that point forward. He would flex on us, even though none of us called it that, whenever he could, and ended up being one of the worst bullies I had growing up. But one time when we were 11, Attack of the Clones was about to come out and we were all hyped about buying toy lightsabers and fighting with them. 4 or 5 of us were playing in my house's unfinished basement, and spoiled kid kept bragging about his more expensive lightsaber and how it would destroy ours in a fight, while sitting on the side and not actually fighting anyone. We all got sick of it and called him out on it, and he came in to fight me and my $9 Keygon saber. 10 seconds in, I accidentally hit his fingers, which happened constantly in these fights, and he immediately started screaming and crying. The rest of us got silent, shocked at how much he was overreacting. He threw his saber across the room and ran out of the house. He kept being a garbage pile until we both graduated and moved away, but for a long while, no one would let him forget what a whiny baby he was at lightsaber fighting. How about that kid who tried to get off from killing 4 people in a drunk driving accident by claiming he suffered from influenza, being too rich to know right from wrong? He was caught after fleeing to Mexico and ended up serving just 2 years in prison. Ethan Couch. He was released this year and back on probation again. His mom, I think, is in jail again because she broke the terms of her house arrest that she was on because she helped him escape to Mexico when he broke his probation the first time. I grew up in the ghetto, so parents usually stayed inside, neglected kids, and told them to play in the streets. So one day I'm outside playing with my friend, I'm around 10 at the time, she's 7, and an actual 3-year-old starts calling us fucktards, just everything you can imagine. The kid ends up heckin' biting me, so I go over and tell his dad. Dad calls me a B. Great. Sometime the same week another kid is harassing us, calling us poor and ugly, and once again, B. So about fed up with this crap, he's sitting over a rain drain, so I grab his payday bar that he had apparently saved up all his money for, he's like 6, and throw it down the drain. He starts screaming and wailing, I'm gonna tell mama. My mama's gonna beat your butt. I sit around while he tells his mum a few houses down. He comes back all righteous and tells me mama wants to talk to you. Frick. So I go over to his house and his mum says, what did he do to you? I heard his side. I want yours. The kid's smile immediately drops. I tell her about the harassment and she smiles the sweetest little smile before beating his butt right in front of me. Justice from the ghetto, everyone. Thanks kids mama. Frick irresponsible ghetto moms. American Redditors. How do you deal with spoiled rotten trick-or-treaters? I don't tend to have problems with crappy trick-or-treaters because I give out full-size candy. They only get the candy though if they say trick-or-treat and if they're in costume. I don't have many requirements for the costume, so when teenagers who aren't really in costume show up I ask what they're supposed to be, and if it's something stupid like high school student or a human I tell them to try again. One year I had a kid tell me he was dressed as the guy who was gonna rig my house if he didn't get some freaking candy. I told him I was way off, and that I thought he was the multiple stab wound victim they'd find in the river tomorrow. my neighbor is going to give out campaign pamphlets, both presidential and senatorial, to kids who give him a hard time. I have kids that just walk up and put their bag up without saying a word. I just stare at them until they either say trick or treat or thank you. Ran into one of these last year. I refused to give candy until I was properly trick or treated. Made for a very awkward 5 minutes. You forgot about raisins. You are a monster. You a really nice kid. Caramel apple. You and butthole. Caramel onion. Frick you. Enjoy. I know one guy that gives away pocket Bibles to little shoots too. Caramel Bible. Yell trick and spray them with silly string. Or mace. Just give out pencils. I was always pretty peed when I got pencils. They were always the crappy kind you have to sharpen yourself. This is America, my pencils shouldn't have to be sharpened. A bucket of chocolate syrup to pour in their bag. Freaking shoots. Joke's on you, my bag is full of vanilla ice cream. I give them ketchup packets instead of candy. Even better when you put the ketchup in individual bags so they think it's tons of candy, but when they get home it's just ketchup. I could clean out all the old canned goods I have to. Here kid, have a Fresca. Worst I get are the uncostumed teenagers that can't count to 2. Oh, you said 2 pieces of candy? I'll take 6. Many of the people in my neighborhood are fairly poor, so I'm not going to be a dong and deny 50 cents of candy to anyone. Plus, I like keeping my house and trees TP free. Also fun are the parents that come to the door while their kid is at a different house, then yell at them across the street. Hey, kid's name. What the heck you want really? Just freaking buy your kid a bag of candy and you won't have to go out in the cold. My 5-year-old will probably go to about 5 houses before he calls it quits, but loves handing out the candy at the door. I like the parents that walk around with a bag for their little brother who's too sick to come out. Dang, that kid must be about dead by now. 4th year in a row. Pass out toothbrushes and floss for those snotty little shoots. Full size bars for awesome ones, though. Not something I did, but every year on Halloween my mum would go to our local Asian supermarket and buy a massive bag of durian flavored candy. Seriously, nastiest sweets ever. Then when an extra bratty child came along, she'd smile sweetly and hand them an extra large bag of them. If any of you want to try durian flavored sweets, don't. Seriously. Some Ashile handed out coupons to a gym membership with his candy. I think it was healthy candy too. I always offer one to the bored, cold teenager standing at the back of the drive. Whether they volunteered to look after their younger siblings or were forced to, they obviously would rather be somewhere else. Most politely decline, but it always makes them walk off a bit less miserably. In our area there is a time limit on trick or treat, so right after the end time these teenage douche and training teens with the going to Iraq sized duffel bags and no costumes, or maybe they were douche and training costumes come to think of it, make the rounds. Hey, we're your last kids tonight, so why don't you just give us the rest of your candy? I just pointed at some kids down the street. No, they were plastic Easter eggs filled with mercury. Does the trick every time. Hey, my bag's pretty heavy, I must have an buttload of goodies to enjoy later. Boom. Call the next door neighbors and tell them that the next guys they're gonna get are stinkers. Next thing you know, she'll come out of the door in a sad face and say there's no more candy. Sorry. The ones that really bother me are the kids that just put on their little league uniform and call it a costume. If it's something you do in real life, it's not a costume, except for professional sexy nurses. Give them more candy, increase their risk of diabetes, and let Darwinism take effect. That's the spirit. I got Heath bars to hand out. It's a proven fact that you don't start liking Heath bars until you are an adult. You're welcome, parents. This may sound corny, but I got the idea from Reddit. Wear a white shirt that says life on it and just hand them lemons. Uncostumed children last year who didn't even say thank you when we were gracious enough to actually give them candy despite their lack of effort. We're not giving out crap this year. Those little brats can go to heck. If I were not working during trick-or-treating hours, I'd open the door and just let my big old dog bark at them, then close the door again. Last year we had kids like that. thinking they deserved extra handfuls of candy. So this year I bagged a few pieces each and only will bring out as many bags as there are kids in costumes on my porch. It is also the perfect time to clean out the fridge of unwanted spoiled goods. A hammer. Britfolk here. Eggs fired from a remote controlled cannon work wonders. Not 10 minutes ago did a group of kids knock on my door extremely loudly and repeatedly. While one yelled gimme candy it's my birthday, then the little brat started to open the door and come in right as I was reaching the door. I just gave them all candy and shut the door. His friends were acting far more respectful and saying thanks. But then the kid starts banging again on the door. So I open it and he demands more candy since it was his birthday and I only gave him one. I said okay and gave fistfuls to his quiet and obviously embarrassed friends and just looked at him before I shut the door, leaving him with a single 2-piece Starburst pack. I had a couple of turds this year who bitched about me giving them too little. This is in Norway where most people don't participate, so they should be happy to get anything at all. After I gave candy to 3 of the 4, 2 of them said are you kidding, begging for more. I gave the last kid the same amount and said they could at least be polite, shutting the door. I wish I had a couple pieces of cat crap for them, though. I'm thinking about giving them Auburn tickets. I was raised to think that going trick-or-treating is a privilege, not a right, and to keep in mind that people spent a bunch of money on candy, so I dang well better be respectful of that. One time, I forgot to say thank you, so my mum made me give the woman all my candy. Now, I don't give out candy to kids who whine and are brats to their parents. If they don't say thank you, I would reach into the bag and take back what I gave them. I don't answer the door. Look them straight in the eyes and squeeze a mayonnaise packet into their bag. I keep a basket of dollar store toothbrushes for those kids. I just pretend I'm not home. As we speak, I'm hiding out in my bedroom because my dog just barked, notifying me that there are children close by. I always figured that when I get my first apartment house, I'm going to freeze some fun size candy every year for the spoiled kids the next year. You don't like a fun size Snickers? Have a year-old frozen fun size Mary Jane. I'd wear a scary mask and follow them around, stopping at every house they did and staring at them. I fake a mental breakdown about how I try to make people happy. You have to be screaming like an insane person the whole time, and if they try to walk away you scream for them to come back. If you want to go all out, fake a suicide in front of them. Get one of those exploding blood packs and a cap gun from Spirit Halloween or any other Halloween store, and presto, you have now condemned a group of kids to years of therapy. Former spoiled rotten kids, when did the real world really hit you? I've had an odd experience. I grew up in extreme wealth then went to living very humbly. I'm half Saudi, so I had maids all my young life. Practically wiped my ass. I remember whenever me and my bros got off the airplane and we were driven to the executive gold lounge. Basically, we were minted. However, my parents got divorced and my mother decided rightly I should live with her back in the UK. So I went from maids in a mansion where my bedroom was bigger than most people's entire floor, in the UK at least, to sharing a tiny bedroom with my brothers. I remember my first time washing dishes at school and I did it with cold water and the other students laughed and said you're supposed to do it with warm hot water. I went from buying whatever I wanted to buying second-hand school clothes. But it was the best thing to happen to me ever because, holy crap, when I went back and met some of my old friends, their minds, they were just not normal people. This is when it really hit me, because I just saw how different they were. Fully grown men being catered for my maids in their old age. Do they have no shame? Rich coming from me, but hey, I mended my ways. Whenever I visit my father I see my stepbro who continued being spoiled. 35-year-old man. Never had a job, leeches off his mum. Our maid is like 60. She cleans his clothes, washes his dishes, might as well squeeze his ass cheeks whilst he takes a crap. I refuse to let the maid do anything and I give where I can from money I earned. To see such a difference is what made me grateful and hit me. I am so freaking glad I didn't continue growing up spoiled. Frankly, I didn't grow up poor either. My perspective of poverty was warped compared to real poverty. Our tiny shared bedroom was luxury. I've learned never to take anything for granted. I'm so glad I grew up normally. I couldn't stand the person I'd become if I continued growing up spoiled. I work hard now. I support my mother. I have pride. Something I'd never have if I continued being a leech. Good for you, bro. It's so much more satisfying growing and having struggles, but knowing in the end that you will be a better person for yourself and the people around you. My roommate in college was a former Marine. He was basically like 1. I am not cleaning up this crap for you, and 2. This crap will be cleaned up. This wasn't me but my wife. She grew up well-to-do. I grew up in a trailer. Like, I can't watch Trailer Park Boys because it's too real trailer. We met in college, which took everything in my power to get to. She, on the other hand, had it all paid for. We met, fell in love, etc. The first break, I took her home to my parents. Again TPB, so drugs, dirty, dingy, broken trailer. She met everyone and was nice enough. That night, we went to bed and I woke up to her just sobbing. She had never realized how great she really had it and how broken and rough the world can be. As to where I was just thankful to be home with my family, on my nice bed, which in hindsight is the sketchiest thing ever. A bed no sheets and alcohol stains and all that crap. Had I known what I know now about the upper middle class wealthy world, I would have never taken her home until I knew her better. I was surprised she stayed with me. I just grew up thinking that the way I lived was perfectly normal, until I met her parents. The ellipses at the end have people wondering on her parents. I mentioned in the comments, but they're your typical white, college educated, church going, rich white people who own land in northern VA and have a really nice house, wear formal wear to house dinners. Parties are big deals with a lot of decorum, etc. Also commas. My dad grew up in a trailer and I showed him the boys last time he visited. He said, you know, it's a bit exaggerated, but not as much as you'd think. First time I went a week living on beans and ramen because that's what was in the house and I didn't have any money. I learned that in the real world, everything is not just handed to you. I'm still a bit spoiled and I still have issues with prioritizing expenditures, but I'm much better than I was when I was 21. I'm 23 and realized yesterday that I have $50 to get me through the next 10 days after paying rent. I have a lot of ramen in my near future, and I just bought a Nintendo Switch. I'm still figuring out this prioritizing expenditures thing too. I grew up in a Midwestern town, middle class neighborhood, private school, etc. I never needed anything, but my dad grew up poor and my parents wouldn't give in to any of my big wants. Super Nintendo I never got. Haha. My neighbor and best friend got everything he asked for. I loved hanging at his house because he had the best TV, the best food, the newest video games, 100 pairs of shoes and 1000 hats. After we moved away, I found out that his parents gave him anything he wanted because they were in a loveless marriage and constantly fought around him. They were buying love when my parents were showing me love. I always wondered why he would prefer to stay at my house with a crappy TV and an outdated Nintendo with no games. Turns out he wanted to stay at our house because my parents didn't fight and would actually listen to him. My parents became surrogate parents for him and to this day he calls them mom and dad. I'm happy to call him brother. If it weren't for him, I would never have known how I won the parental lottery. I grew up with my mother doing everything for me. I was never taught many things because she would do everything. She's an amazing mother, don't get me wrong, but I wish I was taught more. Well, I have a job now where I take care of mentally disabled adults. You basically have to do everything. You have to do all of the cooking, all of the cleaning, all of the laundry, and you have to shower clients and change their clothes and diapers. Some of them can change themselves. I'd say that this job is helping me a lot. It's giving me more experience in the real world and a great opportunity to help my patients and spend time with them. I wasn't necessarily spoiled, but I definitely grew up in a very privileged family. Upper middle class, academic dad and lawyer mum. I was 17 and I got a job as a porter at a hotel to save and travel for a bit before going to uni. My dad lives in Singapore, so I figured Asia. I went to Indonesia, Yogyakarta to see Borobudur, and I was staying in a decent but not crazy fancy hotel near the temple. It was my first night and I had no idea if tipping was the normal thing and didn't have any rupiah on me, so I put a US $5 bill under my plate when I left. Working in a hotel, you get foreign currency tips. The note was worth more as a novelty tbh. As the waitress cleared the plates and I was walking away, she freaked out, thinking I had left it there. She didn't speak a lot of English, but I got it across that it was a tip and she basically broke down. It was frick all money, so I was really confused. Made the mistake of googling median wages of the area when I got back. Median, not even minimum. Salary is about $3,000 a year. What I made in about 2 hours at a minimum wage hotel job, she made in a week busting butt for 80 hours. I tipped well all through my trip. Even bought the crappy knickknacks from the hawkers by the temple. It was freaking gutting. Since someone asked why I knew a tiny bit about Indonesia, this was my first trip. In uni I've been studying primatology and human biology, and I've done field work in Java. Went back to Borobudur and got better photos. And Sumatra. I've traveled to quite a few countries now, most of which are relatively or severely impoverished like Ethiopia and rural highland Peru. And I'm convinced that that first trip to Indonesia colored how I view the world. I realized that some people really struggle with money. I thought people didn't buy things they need, cars, appliances, clothes, a nice house, because they were really frugal and saving up. It's not even that I didn't know about poverty, but I thought it was a third world thing and that everyone in the US is pretty comfortable. This didn't sink in until college. I'm terrified for after college. Military boot camp. Wanted to eat an orange. Didn't know how to peel one. Slyly waited for someone else to start peeling before emulating him. End up with a badly squashed, untidily peeled orange ball that tasted like sour reality. Boom. Evolved. Clarification. If given the choice, I usually don't eat oranges. Not a fan of the taste. And some of you are right. On rare occasions that I ate oranges, they are usually peeled by someone else or packaged in wedges or juiced. This was basic military training in Singapore. During training, boy was I hungry like a vampire at a blood bank, and the fruit of the day was oranges. Whole, unpeeled orangey balls of untouchable glory. The trick was to eat my food relatively slow enough, which is still pretty damned fast considering mealtime was borderline 10 minutes, so that I didn't finish my food too early and end up staring at my orange as if it's an alien's testicle. And I can peel oranges by hand with relative ease now. I had a buddy in 8 who didn't know how to eat one either. Regular guy, just didn't know how. He took a bite of it without peeling it or anything. We all had a good laugh at that one. I grew up in Indonesia, a third world country where you'd definitely have maids if you're posting on Reddit. I grew up thinking it's common to have multiple maids. Moved to Singapore, a first world country where people still have maids, but it's more of an upper middle class and above thing. Got assigned to sweep the floors by the teachers, and that was my first time holding a broom. Swept it back and forth like in cartoons, and everyone was looking at me going, "What the frick are you doing?" Turns out I was just creating a dust cloud around me. You have to sweep in one direction and gather all the dust into the dustpan. Mind blown. I was raised by my great grandmother. She was well to do, active well into her 80s, and her world revolved around me. Ballet, gymnastics, all the music classes I could fit in my schedule. I had a menagerie of pets. Christmases were obscene. She catered to my every whim as a child. Now that I'm an adult and my wonderful gram has passed, I've learned that what I had was really unique. The world does not wait on me. I'm not special to everyone. I struggle with entitlement and narcissistic tendencies. It's isolating at times and I miss her. The easiest way to get lots of positive attention is to be outwardly humble, kind, and gracious with people. You just have to minimize your ego. Same destination, different paths. I grew up in a small town and my parents were not rich, but they had me late in life and were both retired. They were living off of my dad's pension. I had them both at home all day every day. Dad focused all of his energy on parenting. which meant I had a problem solver at home all the time with nothing to do but solve problems for me. Whatever went wrong, he could usually make it go away. He told my mom I shouldn't have to get a job in high school because he is going to have a job every day for the rest of his life. Let him enjoy this, even if he doesn't understand right now. So I spent my teenage years hanging out, playing video games, and working semi-hard at school. Then I went to college not too far from home. Dad paid to put me up in the swanky dorm and I would go home every weekend to get my clothes washed and such. Then dad died. Within about 2 months time, I lost my dad and my mother informed me she was going to move back to where her family was from. Then sold my childhood home and moved away. I found out what rent costs. I found out what food costs. I found out what utilities cost. I learned about the laundromat. I got into a wreck. Guy came over a blind hill in my lane. Replaced the car my dad bought me with a crappy here's what you can afford car. I had 1 or 2 good friends who stuck by me and helped teach me how the world works and dealt with my issues related to grief. Good friends. Grew up in a fancy home. More rooms than you could ever need on a large property in a pretty rural area. I got everything I wanted whenever I wanted. Huge plasma TV, DSLR camera, motorbike, pony, etc. I never knew what my parents really did for a living. I remember kids always asking what my parents did as a job in the playground and I never really knew how to respond. I soon figured out what my parents did when my dad was arrested for drug trafficking in the house. Cars and everything else was repossessed by the government as profits of crime. I now live in a crappy house that barely stands in a dodgy area of town. It definitely was a shock to the system, but I'm adjusting just fine, I guess. When I was 16 my parents left for a week vacation and gave me money for the week. Since I didn't know how to do laundry, never even seen it done, I took all my clothes to the dry cleaner, even my panties. The cleaners asked 3 times if I was sure I wanted them dry cleaned. I said yes. 2 days later I got 8 pair of panties safety pinned to individual hangers. My laundry cost about $90 that week. I just assumed this was all normal. Real world hit me only much later. It's only in retrospect I see I was spoiled. Sort of around when I had a limited allowance and budget in college. I was spoiled but not rich. More naive than anything. We get a lot of guests at my hotel who do this. We have one guest who routinely had $200 worth of dry cleaning. It's almost cheaper to just buy new socks, underwear, etc. I was a spoiled rotten child and also into my teen years. My parents bought me a brand new red convertible for my 16th birthday. I threw a fit over it because what I actually wanted was my brother's old car that we still had, which was dark blue in color. I was so shallow and a horrible person back then. So what really turned me around? That next summer I took a job as a camp counselor at a local day camp. I did not have to work, but I was bored and sounded like something easy to do. God, I was so wrong. This day camp was specifically geared to the lower classes who could not afford childcare during the summer. We served them breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack. For a lot of the camp kids this was all they would eat that day, and on Fridays they would beg for extra food snacks to take home for themselves and or their siblings because they may not get to eat again until Monday. This really hit me hard, but the part that got me the most. This one kid, around 5'6", would refuse to take their shoes and socks off, even if we were going to the public pool that day. I couldn't understand why until one day he came in limping, like his feet were causing him so much pain. I convinced him to let me help him get his shoes and socks so I could see what might be bothering him. Once I did, it took everything in me not to break down right there. His socks were covered in blood. His poor tiny little feet were covered in sores and his toes seemed to curl under a bit. He was in so much pain from the state of his feet. As it turns out, he had been wearing shoes about 3 sizes too small. His family couldn't afford new shoes. I took my lunch break and went out to buy him new socks and a few pairs of shoes. This broke me, which I definitely needed. It changed my way of thinking forever. Wow, I'm glad it changed you. I'm sure you changed that little boy's life for the better. From the subcontinent, things went downhill after I got into an engineering university. Mom had to sell her wedding jewelry to get me through the semester. Now here I am, thinking I should get her some gold jewelry because now I can. Mom, I love you. Do it. At 20, when I started dating my now husband, he was raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs and they still barely got by, while my mom was a Sam and my dad was as successful in his line of work. Husband and I went to high school together. At the beginning of every school year my parents would easily drop $15K on me and my sister for school clothes. My husband would go with our HS secretary to get clothes that were paid for by the school district. I didn't even know that was a thing. Yes, I am aware and I agree that this is a stupid amount of money to spend on clothing. To clarify, a large portion of that amount was spent on designer items, accessories. I have no idea why we went to the same school. I wasn't in charge of creating the imaginary dividing lines of our city. My husband and I have known each other for years and were always friends. We got together a couple years after high school for a drunken night complaining about exes, and discovered we share a lot of the same ideals about relationships in general. We moved in together 3 weeks later, lol. Yes, he makes decent money now, and yes, he's handsome as frick. Sometimes I just stare at him and I'm just like, how? Also, my parents are wealthy, I am not. We live modestly, and have very little wiggle room every month. But I truly and honestly don't give a crap because we are really freaking happy. 15K for clothes. Everything I own combined is barely worth that, lol. When I was removed from my parents and put through a year of foster heck, sadly, my brother didn't get the same rude awakening I did. Spez. We were in the same foster house. It's just he didn't fully grasp that the world doesn't revolve around him, while I mostly have. I'm still trying to fight off some demons from both eras. I grew up living in a huge hotel, kind of like your Sweet Life of Zack and Cody thing, except that I was a spoiled young kid. When I was 7, I'd have a nanny put on my socks, wear my school uniform every day, etc. I had 4 nannies before that and they all left. I made one cry once because I yelled at her for not helping me with my math homework. I slapped another one. She left 3 months later. It hit me hard a year or 2 later when my dad had to travel overseas to work, so I was stuck with that one particular nanny named Stina. My dad didn't really send a lot of money back to us and so we had to live in a cramped apartment since we needed to move out of that particular hotel. I hated my nanny at the beginning because she was just so dang strict. Turns out that she was doing this because she wanted us to change. And we did. Because my dad didn't send enough money and didn't want a stingy guy, we had to ration our food on some days and I couldn't go to many school activities because we didn't have a car like we used to. And we didn't have enough money. This was hard on my brother and I because we went to a private international school, so it was really hard not trying to show others our personal struggle. It was even harder on me as I was a prefect at that school, and so not attending school activities, extracurricular stuff was the worst. During that period, I learned so much and begun to empathize properly. I learned to socialize with my neighbors, be independent, and this made me enjoy my childhood living in that apartment more than I ever did living in a hotel. I owe it all to my nanny, to be honest. I consider her my surrogate mom now regardless of the rough beginning, and I, honest to God, would not have changed one single bit if it wasn't for her. Now, I wouldn't say I was spoiled by any means, but I sure as heck was lazy as frick. When I eventually moved out on my own, the word consequences meant nothing to me. It took me nearly starving a couple of times, including a particularly unpleasant 3 weeks in which I did some things I'm not very proud of and eventually getting kicked out on my butt to learn my lesson. I was taken in and given a job by the family of a guy I barely knew from high school, and we're close as brothers now. But to this day I'm still working on paying back the kindness of friends I don't deserve who paid my rent multiple times. Got to college and my roommate washed his plastic silverware for reuse. He'd never held an actual metal fork. Plastic was cheaper. I've bought forks from a thrift store before. I don't believe you. Well, I believe it happened, but they're dirt cheap. I never had a job until the age of 19. Up until this age I assumed people started working when they felt like it. As in, you wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I feel like working now. I'll go sign up to this company of my choice, and I'm going to choose to work this amount of hours per week. Fast forward 3 years and due to parental abandonment I have no car, no education, will soon have no place to live, no license and no work skills, because I never had to. Dad worked for someone and that someone promised to sell him the company. When the day actually came, he sold the company to someone else and my dad quit his job. We were broke and I could no longer ask for things. We almost went bankrupt and nearly sold the house. Dad started his own company and we're still in debt. Haven't had enough money for anything and I have to make do with $12 for a week or even 2 sometimes. I'm in college now and it's still the same. We live in Malaysia BTW. I remember when I was 12, my dad was broke and we sat in a small stall to eat. He didn't have enough money to eat but promised me that we would have a life that's secure. I'm in college today and pretty thankful for that despite the lack of money. I tend to make do here and there. I grew up very privileged. When I look back on it, I never even appreciated it. When I was 17 I came out and went from privilege to getting kicked out and living on the street. That was some years ago now and I've made a pretty amazing life for myself. In fact, I'm almost 100% positive that I'm better off than if I kept on my previous track. In every way. Between junior and senior year of HS, got a job at a local tire shop because I liked cars and manual work and needed beer money. I was a straight A student and actually prided myself on being a hard worker, but didn't really understand the degree to which no one gives a crap what your problem or excuse is. This work needs to get done. 2 moments stick in my memory almost 20 years later. Mexican probably legal co-worker asks me what do they teach you in school? Because you can't work for crap. Dude was working 6 nearly 11-hour days per week and I was barely doing 40 hours. I fricked something up in the shop. Think it was mounting white walls the opposite of the customer's request, and the shop manager was calling me an idiot for it. I said something like you know I have a 4.2 GPA, right to which he responded I don't give a crap. Quit screwing up. In those moments I came to realize my golden boy gifted status didn't excuse me from getting the freaking job done right, no matter how simple I should be. Actually ushered in an attitude of reverse snobbery against upper middle class and above people and their incredible helplessness. TLDR. Privileged gifted kid gets job at tire shop, learns what real work is and that no one assumes he's special. Yep. Once high school ends it doesn't matter if you aced all the AP classes they offered. Now you're just an adult like all the rest of the sad saps and no one is going to look at you differently for being smart. Even if you do tell them what your GPA is. By far cringiest moment of that story. Glad you're not that guy anymore. Who is the most spoiled person you know and why? My brother. He has this notion that because he is adopted our parents owe him forever. He treats them like garbage and they do all they can to help him and his son. He's a 27-year-old man-child and I can't stand him. And in case anyone's curious, I'm adopted too though we're not related by blood. I love my parents and just see them as normal parents. Girl I went to college whose parents paid her a salary which was more than I earned in my job. She then used to tell her parents she needed extra money for course books and go spend it on booze. Her parents didn't want her to work because it would interfere with her studies. She got fricked up so much on booze and drugs that she ended up dropping out of college and then they bought her a flat to live in. I've worked at a private school in the UK this past year, and I have a few examples of kids just having no idea they were spoiled, which just made it worse. Minus 16 years old comes into school on Monday complaining how unfair it was that his dad grounded him for crashing their plane. I asked him how bad it was, and he said it was only £40,000 worth of damage, which his dad can afford, so what's the problem? My jaw dropped. Another 16 years old asks me what I'm doing for the summer break. I tell him working mainly, with perhaps a weekend to visit a few friends. He could not wrap his head around why I wasn't traveling, going on holiday etc. Then followed to go on about how he'd spend his summer at his private lake, saving the best one for last folks. On his birthday, one of the 18-year-old students received a chain of hotels, a fully operating 5 chain that would all be officially owned under his name. The nerve of this kid to complain it wasn't what he wanted made me really resent working there for a while. My cousins, my aunt and uncle can never say no to them and they have now drained my grandmother's small fortune. My other uncle contributed to that as well, but now my grandmother is selling her place and moving to a smaller one because of how much money she has had to give to that side of the family. I love them but they are just spoiled as can be. This kid I went to high school with got a Porsche for his 16th birthday. Keep in mind 16 in my state is when you can get a permit, so he didn't even have a license. He got a new one later in high school after backing out into a tree. He basically was handed admission to an Ivy League school because his grandparents had donated a building. During one of my substitute teaching assignments, I had the joy of meeting the most spoiled teenager I had ever encountered before or since. Conrad was spoiled in a way only children of two rich divorced parents can be. Conrad was an only child whose parents used material goods and money to buy his affection. On the first day of this particular sub-job, Conrad informed me he didn't have to do his work. He would just get his father to pay the teacher a crapload of money and he would get an A. I stated I didn't care what he did as long as he did not disturb his classmates and wrote his comments in my sub-notes. He was placated for the day and dinked around on his cell phone until the period ended. The second day really showed Conrad's true colors. The class was supposed to do group work and he was working with a group of his friends. He spent the work time continuously talking about how much he hated his mom because she bought him a used 2013 Ford Focus for his 16th birthday, instead of a brand new BMW that he wanted. I made a comment that I would love if my parent gifted me a fairly new used vehicle. To which he commented, "Of course you would. You're a teacher and poor." I told him to get back to work and if I caught him off task again, he would need to work alone. He was fine after that. The third and final day of my assignment, Conrad was in an absolute tizzy about something his mother had done. Probably the BMW thing. I didn't care. What I did care about was that he kept commenting on how he was going to sabotage his mother's plane so that B would fall out of the sky and die. I told him to rein in those comments as they were not appropriate for school and could get him in serious trouble. I left him with his group to continue work from the previous day. Approximately 5 minutes later, I hear nervous laughter coming from Conrad's group. He has his phone out and is showing the group something on it. I walked over and asked to see what was causing such a fuss. Conrad, the idiot, showed me his Snapchat story which consisted of a picture he took of his mother with an emoji gun pointed at her head and the text shoot this B. I got to send him to the office, talk to the school social worker and the school resource officer, all because this kid didn't get a BMW and his parents couldn't be asked to show him some actual love and affection for his entire life. My brother's girlfriend's daughter screams whenever she can't have what she wants. They give her what she wants so she'll stop screaming. A girl I have known most of my life. Her parents treat her like she is the Queen of England or something. Growing up, if there was a new toy out that she wanted, her parents bought her 5, and if possible, in each color, because she would break her toys. She had 2 3-bedrooms. One was big enough to be a studio apartment alone. Where did she sleep? Her parents' bedroom. If she wanted to go somewhere, like Disney World, her parents dropped everything to start planning that vacation. When she started driving, she had 3 new cars in 8 months. Not because she crashed them or they broke down, but because she just had to have the newest model. I think she is on her 15th car now. Never has had a job. Her parents pay for her and now her son. In school, she had a tutor. I say it in quotes because the tutor just did her homework for her. I'm surprised she can even read and write, honestly. Although, reading her Facebook statuses shows me she can't write much better than my 9-year-old. The worst part was, if she didn't like someone, she had her parents do their best to try to ruin that person's life. She got her 7th grade teacher fired, claiming he was being inappropriate with her. He wasn't. He never was in a room with her alone. He was a kind, old man, but he didn't put up with her not doing her homework. He failed her in a few subjects. He was never charged or arrested or anything. No legal trouble from it, but the school did force him into retirement because they were scared. Just gotta point out that the Queen of England repaired and drove trucks during World War II. There was a kid in my fraternity whose parents were literally billionaires. We actually had a couple of them, but this kid was just dumb rich. For making the dean's list one semester, his parents let him get any car he wanted under $100,000. I am not making this up. Kid got peed because the package he wanted on his Jaguar F-Type made it over $100K and his parents said fine after enough protest. At least I got to drive it sometimes though. Sick car. There's a little crap of a kid next door. Parents are those new age parents. Real hands-on parenting. No one is better than Dylan. He's 11 and has a PS4, Xbox One, drum kit, guitar, and his parents for the last 5 years have sent him to Barcelona for a football camp. He walks around like Lord Muck, has one of those resting smug faces. I hate him. I'm a 25-year-old male. Guy from my old school was gifted by his parents a 24,000 new sport car. 2 months later he totaled it while texting. His parents bought him a new SUV same price. Crashed it next month. Parents bought him a used Porsche for $2,000. He ranted for months. Let me tell you about Rebecca, single mom who is a lawyer for a big phone company. Rebecca is the youngest child with a large gap, so she's basically an only child. Here are a few things that happened in the year we were friends. Mom would always buy her Cadillacs and she would wreck them within 6-8 months. Has worked at 2 different locations of the chain restaurant we worked at together. Has been fired from one twice and the other, where we met, 4 times. For reason below. Shows up to work 2-3 hours late and is never in uniform, so she spends an hour in the restroom getting ready. This happened more frequently than her actually showing up on time. Only reason she even worked to begin with was her mom wouldn't pay for her boob job. She did earn enough to get them and they are not very good. After she's been fired once, she'll wait until there are new managers at the store. High turnover rate. Apply and be hired again. Rebecca is in college getting her undergrad. She's currently 24, but cannot pass most of her undergrad classes. She has stated multiple times to multiple people that she expects the university she attends to pay for her doctorate degree that she will complete by the time she is 26. A doctorate degree in 2 years without being able to pass undergrad classes? Okay. Emailed the same university, literally emailed university at email address to request them to buy a multi-million-dollar mansion for her so she can start an orphanage. She sent links of said mansion with the email. When she didn't get any results from the university, she emailed Harvard wanting to apply. She posted the email on Snapchat and the first line reads something like, "I know I don't have the best grades, but I would be a great addition to the community." Harvard has not responded. Her mom bought her a very large house in a nice neighborhood so she could get away from her controlling boyfriend. He asked her to get a job to pay her part of the bills, so she begged her mom to buy her this house. The last I heard of her is she ran her car into the boyfriend's house and then texted him saying, "Hope you like the new decor. Kiss my rich butt." He has a restraining order against her and the detective he hired said they could bury her rich butt. My half-brother, genetically, his mother was so proud that she raised him, birth to teens, without ever chastising him or punishing him. His adoptive father was meek enough to go alone with his wife's parenting. Half-bro never had time out, or talks about what he had done, etc. Not once in his household. Oh, he was a douche. I was made to play with him because we were kinda the same age, and I tried to get out of it constantly. He was a terror at school from day one. Even in high school, he hadn't had enough discipline in school to make up for lost time, and did stuff like shoot sharp pencils and bits of glass at other students. Funny story, once he missed so badly that he shot himself in the eyeball. I laughed more than I should have at that. I think his teacher did too, before calling in a medical thing. My college roommate and former best friend grew up spoiled as an only child. Huge 5-bed house for the 3 of them. Fancy truck to play with bells and whistles. Daddy's credit card. When I got engaged I asked her to be my maid of honor, and she told me no because she couldn't approve of my marriage. The reason? He didn't have a bachelor's degree, so she was just certain that we couldn't be happy. 8 years, 2 kids later, I'm still poor, but very happy and have my smoking hot karate instructor husband who turned out to be a much better deal than making a spoiled princess happy. My cousin who's 8 years old, my aunt is to blame for his spoiledness. He cannot accept no for an answer. For example, every time he goes to the store with my aunt he gets a toy or a game. And if he goes with me or my grandparents or other aunt and we tell him, "No, you're not getting a toy game, we're just here to pick some groceries," and the boy throws the biggest tantrums. It's so embarrassing. Also because of this he always has to win whenever we play a game. Now not that I try to win all the time, but when I play a video game or board game I play it usually with his twin sister who is a bit of a drama queen but is really mellow compared to him. We were playing the Star Wars Millennium Falcon game and his sister had one and he said no, I win, and proceeded to knock over all hers and my pieces, to which I scolded him telling him that wasn't nice since he had upset his sister, and I told him, to apologize, to which he did, but still. I've heard from his sister that his friends at school don't really like to play sports or games with him because of that. I feel bad for him, to be honest. My aunt kinda screwed him up, I feel, by giving in to every demand he wanted his whole life, and I'm worried how badly it'll affect him as he gets older. My friend's roommate and childhood best friend. She moved to New York after living with her family and working retail after graduating high school, and according to my friend, was handed everything to her you can imagine. If she wanted shampoo, she had her parents leave immediately and get it for her. She literally doesn't know how to contribute to a household. Her parents got takeout and junk food and ready meals so often that she legitimately didn't know what olive oil was used for. She's moving back home with them, and all I can say is good riddance. She's too stupid to be breathing in precious oxygen. Not a child but an ex-friend, who probably was never really a friend but a narcissist. This girl is married to my husband's former coworker. They were in the same shop on base in the military. They weren't like super best friends, but they were in the same platoon from the schoolhouse all the way to be stationed at the same base in Cali. Anyways, that's how we all know each other. So this girl, her and the guy start dating and have a FWB situation. She gets pregnant and decides to have an abortion without telling him. She tells him after she does it, and he's kinda like, oh okay, like it was some big news, but they were both 19 and stupid, so he let it be. Then not long after this she decides she wants a baby, gets super crazy possessive and bitchy towards him, gains about 100 pounds in 6 months, no joke. Girl went from being like 140 to dang near 250 in less than a year. She tells him she wants a baby, so hey, start trying immediately to get pregnant. He thought it was a bad idea, but for some reason she convinced him they should try. He lets her move into his barracks room because he has no roommate. This isn't allowed, mind you, and he could have got in trouble for this. He also never really mentions her weight gain. He gains about 15 pounds and heck breaks loose. She tell him that he's not allowed to eat junk food. She takes his debit card from him so he can't buy food at work. Watches him like a hawk at home, forbidding him to eat things and limiting him to a can of soda a day. Yet she's eating pie for breakfast and Taco Bell for dinner and large slushies and ice creams. Her excuse was that his job requires him to be in shape, but she doesn't need to watch herself. He buys her literally anything she wants and lets her walk all over him. If she wants to go on a trip to Disney World, a few hour drive, he takes her. If she wants to buy a new wardrobe, even though they have no money, he gives her his money. There were times he would give her a limit of only 50 and she spend 150 on clothes and makeup, and he'd just kinda laugh about it and compliment her clothes. He claimed that he was the man and didn't think his wife should have to work, so he didn't mind that she was basically an unhealthy spoiled brat. She wanted a dog, so he bought her a puppy that she pretty much abused, and they gave him away a month later. That girl got that man wrapped around her finger. A girl I am friends with, graduated college with an engineering degree, had a great job making tons of money, which she quit because a guy whistled at her. She worked as a waitress for 20 hours a week and got pregnant. Her parents buy her a house with the expectation that she pays them rent. She stays at this house, which is beautiful BTW, for 6 months and never pays the rent. Her baby daddy lost his job and spends his days playing video games. She gets in an argument with her parents and moves in with her BF's parents. She then gets in an argument with his parents and asks to move back home. Her parents let her move back home, rent free, utilities paid for, and they watch her baby most days. My friend, she gets whatever she wants, whether it be tickets to expensive foreign concerts, albums, photobooks of music artists, a new car when she totaled her first one. I was in the car when it happened and she ran a red light like a freaking idiot, and she never does anything around the house. I was talking with her and her parents were amazed by the fact that I actually do chores around my house. My brother, after parents paid for college, he moved to Chicago to get a master's degree. Parents paid for that year, as in full tuition, room and board. Next 5 years, brother decides he needs to live in Lincoln Park because the rest of Chicago is too dangerous. Only is able to find a part-time job, so parents pay his rent. Brother goes to law school. Parents pay his tuition and all expenses for next 3 years. Year after that, unable to find a job, still lives in Lincoln Park. Parents cover all expenses. Next 7 years, still doesn't make enough money to support himself. Parents cover his expenses. He is 37 and is still supported by my folks. Even has a wife and kids. Still treats my parents' rest of family like garbage when we visit. Parents of Reddit, at what point did you realize that your child was turning into a piece of crap? And this is the reality. For all the pieces of crap out there, very few parents recognize it in their own kid. Can confirm. Brother stole an elderly woman's purse and ran for it when he was 19. He was caught because the police had been monitoring him since he had been previously caught breaking into someone's house in order to rob them, and breaking a car's window to steal a laptop inside. Mum still has. T realized her son is a criminal. He's just a highly intelligent, misunderstood angel. I had a co-worker work out his kids were shoots because he was a crap father. It was impressive. He spent most of his time outside the house without the kids and they were desperate for his attention. Heartbreakingly desperate. He didn't like reading bedtime stories to them because they climb over him. I asked how often he was home for bedtime and he said twice a week. Well crap. I asked if he noticed how troublesome kids had absent parents and he replied he did notice that. I looked at him and asked if he considered that perhaps that was the issue in his household. He was silent and exceptionally introspective for a week and then started going home a bit earlier. Kudos for pointing it out to him. Most people wouldn't have the balls to flesh out someone's parenting flaws to their face. A longtime friend is a single mother. She's a handful, but her toddler is troubling. I was hanging out with him one day and he started pinching me. I asked, "Why are you pinching me?" He said, "Because I hate you." That's not nice. I don't hate you. And I'm gonna cut your eyes off, and cut your nose off, and cut your lips off. My dumbfounded expression of concern towards single mother friend. That was weird, she said. She then denied that he ever said that and completely ignores all of clearly psychopath in the making trays. Cruelty to animals, disrespect for elders, doesn't eat regularly, is allowed to stay up past midnight because she's getting stoned and drunk and that clearly takes precedent over the well-being of her child. The whole situation is fricked. She's a terrible mother. He is a terrible kid. I distanced myself from the friendship because I don't need that crap in my life, nor do I need to aid and abet it. Kind of joking. Maybe, since my kid is only a toddler, but one day after removing him from the bathroom for the millionth time, I realized he would go in there, slam the toilet lid to catch my attention, and then wait till I got to the bathroom before he started trying to do something like drink the toilet water or unravel the TP. As soon as you tell him no or catch him doing something he shouldn't do, he hulks out and goes into hyperdrive and does whatever it is as fast as possible before you can get to the other side of the room to physically stop him. Hopefully this is just a weird toddler phase. Yeah, it's a phase. My kids are 24 and 16 and did similar stuff. Toddlers are buttholes. I do work for my husband's employer from time to time. The boss has 3 kids. We will call them T1, T2 and T3. T3 being the oldest. I had been warned that they weren't normal but didn't know the extent until I met the youngest. He's 5. I was introduced as Mrs. No Pants Dancer Patty and he promptly flipped me off with both hands. It wasn't until a few hours later that he scared the crap out of me. When I asked him politely to stop making a mess with his lunch in the waiting room, he came over to me calmly and motioned for me to come down so that he could whisper in my ear. At which point he said, "I am going to gouge your eyes out and skullfuck your eye sockets till you die." I asked another employee if this was the norm, and apparently it is. I keep my distance from this kid. He throws tools at the staff, swears in front of customers. When he doesn't get his way with his father, he will hide on the property, one day hiding for 3 hours under something, till his father gets on the PA and caves. I am certain he is a sociopath in the making. I am expecting my first child and I'm terrified it will happen to me. Why the heck does a 5-year-old know the word skullfuck? When he got a freaking B in kindergarten. Like, what the crap? It's kindergarten. How do you get to B? What a piece of crap. We have 4 children, one of which displays hallmark bipolar behavior with a family history. We honestly noticed he was different shortly after birth. He is incredibly smart, determined and brave, but I feel like it's good we got him because I am more stubborn than anyone I know and will not bend, ever, to a whining child, and it's exhausting many days. Sometimes the exhausting days fat outweigh the good ones. but I refuse to make excuses for his behavior, because he is going to have his own life someday and I want him to know that he is not the center of the world and he needs to be a good part of it. It's a very hard balance to try and be loving when you are angry, use positive reinforcement when you don't want to, but I'm the parent and that's my job. I think there's a place in the world for people like him and I want him to find it without a struggle, but I also don't want to let my kid walk all over me or anyone else. In short, at birth, he cried and didn't really ever stop just being unhappy with everything. I still love him but don't put up with his crap and we've had some epic standoffs that he has not won yet, so hopefully he grows up into a productive citizen. If all parents were like you, the world would be a much happier place. All credits to you. Not me, but my mom with my sister. She's been a self-centered, entitled bee since she was old enough to have intelligent thoughts. My mom has given her everything she possibly could in life. She tried to pay for her to get through college. Only 2 years after I was forced to either drop out or bankrupt my mom and make her lose everything she had, I dropped out. She still does whatever she can to buy her whatever she wants. Food, gas, clothes, you name it. But when my mom couldn't fund her college education anymore, it was World War III. When my mom won't give her $20 for gas because she quits every job she gets within 2 months, she's a bee. When my mom won't let her drive 5 hours away to a rough city for a concert because she's a 4 minutes and 10 seconds 19-year-old girl who has a bad temper. My mom's the worst person in the world. Until recently, my mom's just said she's a teenager. She'll grow out of it eventually. I think she's finally realizing my sister is just a bee who wants to be handed everything in life. I mean, she's 19. It's time for your mom to let your sister know what cause and effect and consequences and responsibilities are. I think a lot of parents purposely do not see the bad in their children, because most of my friends with kids love and adore the naughty one but are dongs to the nice one. This is almost a universal theme and rarely see it the other way round. I have no idea what it is about treating the one who behaves like they are supposedly wanted to like crap and lavishing attention on the brat. It's like they think they're so together. Frick them, they don't know anything. Not me but my sister. My parents don't see it but I do. She is 16 and spoiled. Parents get her the latest phone, TV, pretty much everything. Also they have started to let her drink, as long as it is in the house. But she has a mini fridge and my parents keep her stocked on drinks. She has already told my parents that she is not going to college and my parents have accepted it and I feel as if they have given up on her. What bothers me is I was never able to get away with half of what she does. Even at 25 I would never think of talking back to my parents. While will cuss them out because they won't give her enough spending money for the day. I did not have a phone till I was just about to graduate, was not allowed to go out past dark. I didn't have my first drink till I was 22, had to work for my allowance, and was pushed since junior high to go to college. I don't complain about it too much because I like to think I will be the more successful sibling. Also have a brother. He is only 12 but shaping up to be worse than my sister. He got so upset one time at our grandmother that it caused a huge fight in the family and my grandmother was cut off by my parents. Went 2 years without talking to her. The reason she got after my brother, he did not clean the restroom after being told for 5 hours that it had to be clean. I like to think I will be the more successful sibling. You definitely will be at this rate. My little brother had a lot of ADHD related behavioral problems from the time he was 2 or 3 until late in elementary school. To each other, in private, my parents often referred to him as Diablo. My neighbor's son has ADHD and I listen to him have hour-long bedtime meltdowns at least 3 times a week. It was worse during the school holidays. Sometimes I just want to give her a hug or something because holy crap, the screaming. My nephew is a demon. He tells my sister, who is his stepmother, that she's a bee, that she hates him, that he'd rather die than be in this family. He has been suspended from school for fighting a bunch of times. Then it boiled over this weekend. She sent him to his room for not doing his chores, so he started bouncing a basketball against his door to be annoying. My sister told him to stop, so he got a bat, came out of his room, and smashed the spindles of the upstairs banister while screaming, "I'm not paying to fix this." So there's my pregnant sister, standing there, watching her stepson violently destroy the house. His dad was called to punish him, and the solution was that he had to stay home from his mom's for the weekend, because she just spoils the kids. This kid wants to go live with his mom, who, by the way, has a kid with some guy who is in prison that she never dated, has been roommates with college students as a 30-something, can't afford sheets for the bed this kid sleeps on, and hasn't paid child support once in his 13 years of life, and tried to convince my sister that she had a handshake agreement with my sister's husband that she didn't actually have to pay child support, and therefore the $20,000 or so that she owes in back child support is null. His fraternal twin brother is an alright kid. He can be a dong sometimes and he's a little addicted to the internet, but ultimately he's a good kid, and when he does act hurt by my sister's actions, it's by hiding in his room and crying. I like his way better. Tried to convince my sister that she had a handshake agreement with my sister's husband that she didn't actually have to pay child support. There is literally no such thing. If they don't have a court order stating there is no support owed, they are still liable for child support from day one. A message from my mother who barely knows how to use a computer when he started skipping school and not coming home when he was supposed to. Then I found a journal of his where he documented his petty crimes with friends and attempts to break into people's garages to steal things. He's nearly 33 now and he's been a pathological liar basically since he was old enough to hold a conversation with. He's also an alcoholic with 5 DUI charges in the span of 3 years and hasn't had a driver's license for 8 years. He's been homeless multiple times and jumps from relationship to relationship so he can have a place to live and be supported by someone else. Oh man, I'm so sorry. My son is 13 and is a sometimes crap. I feel like it's up in the air whether he'll get his act together or not. Most days I'm pretty optimistic, but I know that he has obstacles to get through that I'm not entirely sure he will overcome. So, not all parents are unaware, sometimes we're just working toward and hoping for the best. My kids are both pieces of crap monthly. They will discover some new way to be incredible buttholes. Then I spend a day, a week, or a month training them out of whatever new crappy thing they do. Then they find a new way to frick that crap up. I'm pretty sure that's just called child rearing. When he checked my phone for my Reddit username then stalked me. "Hi there you little sucker. Let's have lunch next week. Mexican? Now let's get pizza." Last week, toddlers are horrible little buttholes. My son is 2. He love switches to the point where I can't leave him alone in a room or he will immediately try and experiment with a socket. He turned off the freezer at the wall and we didn't realize and lost a few $100 worth of food and, as a broke mom, I just sat on the floor and cried. It smelled awful. When he left his wife of a month for a bartender named Jake, my former parents-in-law, probably. I want to know the story here. This post is practically dead because what parent wants to admit that their kid is in butt? Your username reminds me a way by which a parent could harmlessly vent and also seek help through putting out the issue or problem anonymously. After my son was eaten by a polar bear, the next day I returned to the zoo and saw the polar bear taking a dump. That's when I realized. That's some cold crap, Jenny. I'd love to tell you, but don't want to deal with the downvotes and comments accusing me of being at fault. Bottom line, I believe some kids are just born bad. There's always those black sheep. I know a couple people who are absolutely nothing like the rest of their family. I can't figure out how these guys turned out so bad when they come from normal middle class families with nice parents and normal siblings. There's clearly something else going on beyond how they were raised. Colleague of mine, don't work with her much. Wish she'd figure out that her son is not a special snowflake who needs care and understanding to work through his behaviors. He is a bullying little crap who doesn't like being told no. He's a spoilt brat with an attitude problem. Not a parent, but I know when my mother realized my youngest sister was a piece of crap. As chish as it sounds, I almost saw the faith in her daughter leave her. So backstory, my youngest sister is awful. Basically went through a destructive spiral and my parents tried so hard to try and help her and reduce the damage she was doing to herself and others. Anyway, my parents had taken her phone from her and she didn't like it and threatened to self-harm if they didn't give it back. They didn't take it seriously to her face, but after she had stormed off they did a whip around to clear everything up and make sure there was nothing around that she could do damage to herself with. So 2 days go by and nothing repeated and she seems to improve. School comes and she goes in the morning, and by the end my mum gets a call to say she is in hospital having taken an overdose of paracetamol at a friend's house. And when my parents went to see her in hospital, the first thing she said to them was, "This wouldn't have happened if you had given me my phone back." Take it up a notch and cancel service. Walk her to school and home. My cousin is 18 now. He's really intelligent, but he's failed out of school twice. Failed out of an apprenticeship and failed out of a vocational course. Hasn't stuck to any of them for more than 6 months. He's 18 and has literally no qualifications of any kind. His parents are very successful and very wealthy and he's an only child. I remember my dad talking about a visit they had from the family when my cousin was 4. Dad was playing with my cousin on the floor with some toys. My cousin, for no reason, smashed him full in the face with the toy he was holding. Completely deliberately. My dad's an ex-cop and is ex-military. He loves kids and he's great at playing fun and silly games, but you do not frick around with my dad and he does not tolerate disrespect or violence from anyone at any time. So dad gives the kid a stern talking to. "We don't hit people. That's not a respectful way to behave. We don't hurt other people in this house." My cousin sits and looks at him blankly as he talks, waits for him to finish and then smashes him in the face with the toy again. The kid is just laughing and my dad is really goddamn mad now. At which point my aunt sweeps in and picks up my cousin, who is still laughing, and tells him in a cursory way that he's a naughty boy and to come away from there and come and have a snack and play with a different toy, and basically just ignores the incident completely. My dad was livid. The kid hasn't gotten any better. When he was about 7, my aunt started asking family to stop sending him actual gifts for Christmas and birthdays because both of his rooms were now completely full. Apparently she bought him something every time they went anywhere and they'd just run out of space. When he was 9, he was asked not to come back to one of the kids' sports teams he played on because he was such a little crap. In a world of wealthy people where pretty much anything is tolerated if you pay enough, that's hard to achieve. He was a spoiled little crap from the start and I have no idea what his parents are going to do with the monster they created. He's quite friendly, but he doesn't say please or thank you. Stays up all night playing games online. Shows no interest in ever getting a job or leaving home, where his mother cooks and does all his laundry for him. And just doesn't give a frick about anyone else as far as I can tell. I saw him at a family funeral last year for the first time in a decade. At the wake we said hi and did the polite small talk, and he then went and sat at one of the tables with his headphones on and looked at his phone for the next 3 hours until the family left. Let's be honest, middle school years 6-8 would be the logical point to notice. My aunt married a nice guy, got 2 sons, and divorced after 3 years of marriage for no apparent reason and without warnings. Official reason given: I just wanted to have kids, now I got them. Guy thought they were happily in love until that fateful day. His depression was borderline suicidal. Years later, with both kids about to reach teenage, their desperate father, and now ex-uncle, approached me telling me how the kids look up to me and asked me to help put him on track. He told me he has been trying for years now and the teens being kind of deadline for most parents. Following the logic, once in puberty they won't listen to him anyway. He was running out of options, especially only getting to see him every second weekend. Kids were bad in school, little to no manners, one being stuffed with all kinds of vitamins because he was always sick, eating nothing but junk food all the time and thus way overweight, and playing video games non-stop. So I visited at least every second weekend and did crap with him. Today they are 17 and 19, athletic, were decent students, not the best but still top 25%, working as apprentices, and healthy. Even the one that was always sick. I can't tell you what I did because quite frankly I don't even remember most of it myself, but I can tell you it was not the kids' fault. The hardest part was to get the mother to stop being in the way of their kids. My mother realized it when I had a nervous breakdown in 6th grade, became anorexic and bulimic, started slashing my wrists. I had so much pressure to have perfect grades and I couldn't handle it. I still struggle every day, but I see the way she looks at me with disgust or pity because I wasn't a genius. She did not care that I was well behaved and never misbehaved much. But every time she looks at me, I can see how she regrets not taking her abortion pills and terminating me to the next world. I think this is a pretty common reaction for kids who feel pressured to meet a standard of perfection. I'm so sorry. When I asked him what he was going to do with his friends tonight and he said I'm going to chill with my boys. He's 17 and Canadian. I don't know how he came out of my body. When he fell into the gorilla pen. Piece of crap kid here, now 30 and successful, found out my single mother was attending tough love meetings. I was often in trouble with the law and at school. However, with her wild mood swings she wasn't able to stay on task with anything she learned. Result, I became feral, disappearing for weeks at a time in the summer, often not coming home after school. I was a really good kid, but I'll flip script and tell a story about parenting gone awry. My mum and dad divorced when I was 5, but my mother, still, has a big personality and it was even bigger back then 20 years ago. My dad drove a Ford Tempo that mum didn't like and would call it a shitbox. "When are you getting rid of that shitbox?" was one of her go-to lines. So one day we're out to eat at a diner and I see a Tempo drive by out the window and my toddler Sleph said, "Look, another shitbox." Kids will learn from what you do both in terms of big things and little things. Was acquainted with a couple who were hardcore Scientologists. One of them was assistant to Priscilla Presley, so we're talking high level access. They raised their kid under the guidelines given to them. Never discipline the child. Just explain, nicely, what he did wrong. The kid was a freaking snotbag terror at the age of 6. Sat after dinner with friends. Dad is washing dishes next to me with kid. Kid starts cutting into me about how I am gay, too short to be a man, married, professional and I'm 5'8 inches, no giant but no shorty, ginger etc. I tell him it's not okay to say these things to anyone, never mind an adult. Dad watches on silently, never going back for dinner or investing time in the kids again. When my son was about 10 months old he used to crawl over to a shelf that contained all our CDs, 1990s, in alphabetized order and throw as many as he could on the floor before we could get to him. He quickly learned we didn't want him to do this, so whenever he saw the opportunity he would crawl over there as fast as he could. Finally, one day I realized he was slowly crawling backwards toward the shelf, maintaining eye contact all the way. Thinking we wouldn't notice, I realized just then the depths of his wickedness. About 2 months ago, I'm pretty sure my kid is a sociopath at least and she is only 4. She does things that are intentionally mean and hurtful both physically and emotionally. She abuses our animals. She intentionally hurts us and others under the disguise of giving hugs. She has dug her fingers into the necks of our family including her older sibling. These aren't things done when she's mad and she laughs when she does it. I suspect she may also do these things to children at school. She manipulates them sometimes to get them in trouble. She gets in trouble a lot at school as well for disobedience and the like. We took her for a psychological evaluation and they wanted to do a whole workup. Mentioned autism but I don't think that's it. Or not all of it. She honestly scares me at times and I won't leave her alone with other children or our animals, even to use the restroom. Kids are like farts. Yours are okay, everyone else's are freaking terrible. And only attractive to weird people. Can't say for myself but my parents probably realized this a few years ago. I can probably answer for my parents. My oldest brother purposefully tried to drown me in our pool when we were younger, maybe 12 and 9. I can't even recall how I survived. Probably me. I'm a self-centered prick who has been threatened by my mom to kick me out when we have a huge argument. That happens often. The only thing is that I have a job but barely any motivation for college. Plus she uses my SSI for the rent so I'm also part of her support. Like I said, I'm a prick. She's done everything for me and I constantly give her crap. When you find a story about them on our Child Free. One of my distant uncles is one. He's a lot older than me, H addict, been in and out of jail multiple times. He has a son too. I feel really sorry for him. Last I heard, my uncle literally visited his dad one last time on his deathbed just to steal his ring and gold watch he was wearing to score more drugs. My brother tried to rob a Walmart with a pocket knife when he was 14. I have a 4.5-year-old who is obsessed with saying poo on the floor and anything about poo generally. Any excuse to say it, even if it's just, how are you? Have you pooed on the floor today? Piece of crap kid here. I realized that I was worthless in high school. Proving it now. Crappy grades, no friends, no extracurriculars in high school turned into attending an average college. There, I didn't have any friends or hobbies. Graduated without honors with a worthless degree. Took 6 months to get a retail job. OFC unrelated to my degree. And I got fired 5 months into the job. It has been 5 months since I got fired, and despite many applications have yet to even be able to make it to interview stage for any job. Still no hobbies or friends. I have no passion or ambition. I'm 99% sure I'll be killing myself before I turn 25. I turn 23 next month. I was much like you in my 20s. I'm 40 now and my life is better than I ever imagined. Not rockstar great by any means, but stable and secure great. Life is long and everything changes eventually. Keep at it. My parents raised my niece because her parents, their son, was a piece of crap. She earned her title when she stole the jewelry my mom bought as a gift for my wedding. Before the wedding, there is so much more, but this is kinda when she ended up on my radar. At least, that she is a total crap. She was given so many chances and opportunities to turn her life around but chose her path. She is now a frequent flyer at the county jail and has been completely cut off by me and my mom. She is a manipulative drug addict with anger issues. She always said she never wanted to end up like her parents. She ended up exactly like them. What is the worst example of spoiled children you've ever seen? A kid around 8 grabbing clothes in a clothing store and throwing them around while yelling crap. All this is freaking crap. His parents found it funny and were laughing. I was only 12 years old when I saw that, but I wanted to smack that brat around. It was unbelievable. Too bad you didn't hit him. Being 12, you could have gotten away with it. When I was 14 I worked at Tim Hortons. My manager, the store owner, was given the store from her daddy that owned about 5 in the city. For her birthday one year, if I'm remembering right she was in her early 30s at the time, her dad bought her a brand new Ford F-150. All the bells and whistles completely paid off. To which she replies, yeah, it's nice I guess. I was just hoping for something a bit better. I think we worked for the same owner. My cousin had a Christmas list. He got everything on the list, except one thing. I got the one thing for Christmas that he wanted. My uncle, his father, took it from me to give it to him because he was crying that he didn't get that one thing on his list. It was the only thing on my list that I got. From personal experience, my cousin grew up so incredibly spoiled. He once stole $20 of Christmas money given to me by my grandparents on Christmas Eve. He refused to give it back and then we got into a brawl. When our parents separated us and got our sides of the story, his mother would only say, well, you shouldn't have left it out. Wouldn't even make him apologize or say a word to admonish my cousin. No matter what he did, she always praised him and found a way to blame his actions on his victims. The first time I ever heard my mother swear was when she called him a little crap. This kid got the newest iPhone, but it was the wrong color, white instead of black, so his parents were buying him a new one. His mom wanted the one that was the wrong color. She wanted the white one, but after a long time of keeping her on the hook and saying he'd give it to her, he gave it to his girlfriend instead. His parents still got him the new, correctly colored iPhone. What a frick. I worked as an au pair for a family in Italy with 2 girls who were 6 and 9 years old. Although some au pair jobs require light housework and some other things, the mom made it clear that my only responsibility was to teach them English. The 9-year-old spoke enough to get by but had problems with grammar and all the exceptions the English language has, and the 6-year-old only knew a few words. The deal was, I had the mornings off until 1 PM when I would walk them home from school. They would do their homework and then I would play with them and teach them English until dinner time. Or so I thought. The girls would do their homework until 9 PM, when dinner was served. This is a normal dinner time in Italy. apparently. Obviously they were getting distracted, but their dad was at work and their mom was either absent or assured me that they would be finishing soon. On days where they finished early, they were incapable of playing together. They would hit each other really hard, for their age, in the face until the other dropped the toy they wanted, which they proceeded to leave on the ground and storm out of the room. I even saw the 6-year-old drop her toy and cover her face when she heard her sister walking down the hall to come into the room. It was unbearable to be around and impossible for any English to be taught. If I was alone with the 6-year-old, she would turn away if I tried to speak English with her. The only reason I found out she knew a few words was when she would snap her fingers and point to the kitchen and say water or cookie. If I tried to tell her how to ask nicely, she would just shout for the housekeeper. Dinner time was ridiculous. This family was on the Mediterranean coast, where just about anything could be caught or picked fresh, but the girls were so picky they would refuse to eat anything but white supermarket pasta, the same brand I buy in Canada. One night the girls ran screaming from the table when their housekeeper placed freshly squeezed orange juice in front of them. The mom informed me that these were doctor's orders since they wouldn't eat any fruits or vegetables. I was always under the impression that a lot of kids don't like fruits and veggies, but you give them to them anyway because it's your job to keep them healthy. After dinner they would stay up till midnight or 1 watching TV, until they would have screaming temper tantrums when their mom told them to go to bed. One night I was still up to witness this, and after the tantrums the mom jokingly said to me, "And tomorrow it's going to be, oh mom, I'm tired. I wanna sleep in." Yeah, they're 6 and 9 years old. That family was nuts. When I left early I explained to her that I couldn't deal with her kids and she said to me, "Well, I know my girls are very polite, so it must just be you." After reading this I am now breathing significantly heavier. Probably the call I responded to where a 13-year-old girl stabbed her mother in the stomach 6 times with a butcher knife because she wasn't allowed to sleep over with her boyfriend. Similar story, my cousin, 15 or so at the time, tried to kill our grandma who lived with her and her mother because she couldn't have her boyfriend move in. Her mom said it was because there wasn't enough room, so her logical response was to kill grandma to make room. I work in a sports bar that specializes in wings. People let their kids run around our restaurant like we are going to babysit them. I have a few stories. One time I was hostessing, so I had a good view of our front doors. Out of nowhere I see 2 siblings around the ages of 4 and 7 sprint up to the glass door and I crap you not, lick them. And it wasn't just a little tongue touch either. They pressed their hand up to the glass, stuck their little tongues out and licked from the bottom to as high as they could reach. Their parents followed shortly behind them and just shook it off. When they came in I was too awestruck disgusted to properly utter out "Hi, welcome to insert restaurant name. Will you be dining in today or carrying out?" I just sort of stared. Another time, I was still hostessing. A kid sprinted up to me and he was covered in honey barbecue sauce. Like it was dripping off his hands and it was all over his face. The stuff was on his ears. I asked him if he wanted to know where the bathrooms were. He replied, "Nope," and proceeded to rub his hands and face all over my thighs. I'll never forget his tiny little sausages groping all around my thighs. Before I could even say anything the little kid darted away into oblivion. No parents to be found. Another time a group of 25 adults and 15 kids ranging from ages 3-11 were camping in our restaurant. They had already been there for about 3 hours and the kids were very restless. They started a game of freeze tag that spanned across the restaurant. Base was at, you guessed it, my hostess stand. They were climbing all over the tables and jumping into the booths, even booths that had people dining in them. They were yelling and screaming and being obnoxious. We started to receive a lot of complaints. My manager asked the table of adults to control their kids. They got mad but begrudgingly asked their kids to sit down. The kids screamed and cried and whined for the next 15 minutes. They then resumed their tag game. Finally one of the little shoots chased another one of the little shoots into the kitchen. Note: in the state of Texas it is illegal for people not working at a restaurant to go inside the kitchen. Welp, the kids were not aware that kitchen floors are extremely slippery if you aren't wearing non-slip shoes. They quickly skidded out and hit the floor. Oh, the screams were blood-curdling. They could be heard throughout the restaurant. My manager had had enough. He picked up the little shoots and carried them to outside the kitchen. Then he walked them to their parents, who had more than likely heard the screams but chose to ignore them. My manager asked them to pay their tab and get out and never come back. They raged, but it was glorious. The glory of Buffalo Wild Wings. The Houston suburbia locations are exactly like this. Not exactly a kid, but a spoiled young woman. About 4 years ago, I saw a college classmate repeatedly throw her iPhone on the floor until the phone was destroyed beyond repair. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, I always do this when a new model comes out. I'll find an excuse so my dad has to buy me a new one. I've done it since the first edition." Needless to say, I knew to keep away from her. She stopped attending classes one day and I don't even know what she's done with her life. Not a child per se, but an 18-year-old girl I knew had a massive hissy fit because her mom was taking her on holiday to New York instead of Disney World and she wouldn't be able to drink. She ended up screaming down the phone that if she wasn't going to Disney she wasn't going at all. You can't drink, underage, in Disney World either. My sister was the prime example of a bratty child sadly. My parents divorced when she was 4, and she was the only child to live with my mom and be raised by her. Some prime examples include, my mom and stepdad brought her a new expensive PC. She wanted a Mac and the PC wasn't acceptable. She filled up a big cup of water from the kitchen and dumped it on the keyboard of her new laptop PC and demanded a Mac. This ruined the laptop instantly. She was quite proud of her featuring. She got an old used Mac about 3 months after the incident. She was 16. She cancelled an expensive vacation to Florida that my stepdad spent about 10 grand on booking. My sister, about 15-16 at the time, refused to go. She wouldn't say why, just that she wouldn't. My mom and stepdad just took it as she wasn't serious at the time and just ignored her. 3 days beforehand she refused to go, complete with kicking, screaming and hitting. They realized they couldn't get her on a plane like that and couldn't leave her alone. So they cancelled vouchers for the flights they never got to use. The resorts, tours, and tickets for multiple things turned out to be non-refundable. On multiple occasions she threw away her entire wardrobe claiming she didn't like them anymore. The next day she would demand new clothes because she didn't have any. My mom gave in every time. She did this at least twice a year. The last time she did it my mom didn't give in as much and only brought her about 10 outfits afterwards. My mom wanted to give my sister a birthday present of laser hair removal when she turned 17. Complete with legs and bikini area. Expensive to say the least. My sister refused to do it unless the doctor's office would do her butthole as well. The doctor's office declined and she never gave in and never got laser hair removal. She stole money from others and manipulated my family into buying thousands of dollars of MAC makeup for her. She wouldn't wear it unless it was MAC. For those who don't know, MAC is an expensive makeup brand. She made state in high school for cross country almost every year but refused to go to practice. She got worse every week and really only showed up for meets. She was crazy talented and still qualified for state without even practicing. She would go to state every year, not get first, and then blame everyone around her for losing. This one still makes me sad because she was beyond talented and somehow had more than twice the normal lung size of an average adult and could have easily gotten scholarships and had her college education paid for. Instead she was too good to practice and chose sleeping all afternoon after school. There are other stories as well if anyone is interested, but those are my favorite. And in case anyone is wondering, I am nothing like my sister. My cousin, I've mentioned her here before, cries and screams to get what she wants, always has. She has several $100s saved up from birthdays and Christmas, but refuses to ever spend it and will obsessively count it to make sure none's gone. She had a crying fit a couple of Christmases ago because my baby sister got more toys. It was her first Christmas, and they told my cousin she didn't get toys because she got big girl presents like a frickin' big screen TV. She cried because it wasn't the electric scooter she wanted. She was 13. She once threw her clothes at my uncle and refused to get dressed because they were inside out and he told her to turn them herself. Refused to sleep in her own room until she was literally a teenager. Won't cut her hair but makes her mom wash it for her. Has every gadget a kid could want but still uses her mom's laptop and won't charge it. Throws fits anytime she won't get her way. It wouldn't bother me as much if my aunt and uncle didn't give in every single time, but they do. Now she's 14 and it's probably too late. They'll regret it when she's still making them wait on her hand and foot at 30. I bet you anything they are regretting it now. I've seen a lot, but a trend seems to be letting children run around restaurants unattended and doing whatever they desire. Can't stand it. A kid disappeared from school back in high school. Found out he stabbed and killed both his parents when they said no to getting him an iPod when they first released. But mom, it's 25% faster than the old one. There was this guy in my childhood. He grew up without his father and his mother tried to do everything for him, so he turned out pretty bad. He had everything, every gaming console, a huge room and stuff. He was allowed to do everything he wants. He was 10 years old and collected knives, smoked cigarettes and drank beer. His mother even came one day into his room and asked for cigarettes, because she apparently didn't want to go to the store. She was really uncomfortable asking it in front of me. He also was allowed to watch P and he played this game Wet, some kind of P strategy game. He was allowed to do everything. He had everything and today, he must be 26 or 27. He became a rage addict. As far as I know, he smokes that stuff. He's not a big junkie, but definitely not a functioning part of the society. I see him sometimes driving with a bicycle from his mom's old apartment, where she still lives. He probably asked for money. His grandmother lives in the same apartment complex. Another story that just popped into my mind. He wanted a dog, so his mother bought him a wire-haired dachshund. It's actually a dog for old people down here. After a week he was tired of this dog and his grandmother paid him, so that he went out with him. He was like 12, 13 years and his mother put him on his clothes. He basically never mentally matured past the age of 6. That's sad. Myself, unfortunately, I was 18. My parents aren't very well off but were paying for me to go to university. Promised a summer trip, which turned out to be Poland. I flipped out because I didn't deem it fancy enough compared to Italy or somewhere. Had a brilliant time and I'm still ashamed of how ungrateful I was. Please tell me that you've told your parents how much you appreciate them now. My parents have passed away, and I cringe when I think of myself as a child. I wish I could apologize. When I was little, my parents were friends with a couple who had a son about my age. He used to steal toys from me and my brother. When his parents would catch him with something of ours and try to take it away, he'd whine in the most obnoxious voice, "But I want it. Don't you know I want it?" Sometimes he'd break whatever it was to keep it from being taken away. They totally used to let him keep our stuff if none of us noticed first. Though, I remember going to his house and finding my things there. I remember his dad being a big thief too and bragging to my dad about walking out of the store with a freaking chainsaw. My older sister slapped my mom in the face because the car she got was a piece of shit. It was a $30,000 Honda. I see nothing wrong with that car. I'd take that car straight back to the dealership. Once I was in the airport, in Santiago, Chile, and I always go to the same place to eat something after the flight. I go to the Dunkin' Donuts at the end of the airport. I was eating a sandwich and a donut when the show started. 3 American brothers, something like 15, 12 and like 7 years old, began to throw food, shout very loud, run, misbehave, and the father just laughed about everything. He was really amused with everything. All the rest of the people was really uncomfortable, but no one said anything because they were tourists. But at the end it was good because suddenly from nowhere I saw a woman appear. The faces of the kids suddenly turned to horror. She was the mother. The father disappear in a second and I swear the woman grew 4 more arms and started to slap to the 3 kids and pull their hair at the same time. I have never saw so many tears at the same time, and they have apologized with everyone, asked for something to clean all the tables from the local, and the next, clear the floor, and the little kid never stopped the river of tears. It was funny to see whole thing. My greetings to the American mom. Sounds like a scene from Malcolm in the Middle. I have an acquaintance who has made her parents' life a living heck, specifically her dad. Besides the usual give me every single thing I want now or I'll hate you forever, she has managed to never work a day in her life and has got him to support her in her drug addiction. She threatened to kill herself if he didn't pay her $20,000 for beauty school, so he did. She never showed up. One time he would pay for her concerts tickets, so she slit her wrist. Small cuts just for attention. When her parents had got divorced she rebelled against her stepmom so hard. If her stepmom was cooking something, but would walk away from the stove, she'd go pour the food in the drain. She would lock her stepbrother in the closet and tell him that her dad was her dad and not to ever talk to him. She would throw fits and cry and run into her dad's lap if he ever fussed her for any of these things. She was 20 years old at the time. We know this couple with 3 children, a 11-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl, and a 6-year-old boy. The 6-year-old absolutely refuses to wipe his own bottom after using the restroom. He sits on the toilet and yells at the top of his lungs until his mom comes in and wipes him down. One day, his 8-year-old sister says to their mom, "Mom, why doesn't he wipe his own butt? He does it just fine at school." She may be the smartest person in that whole family. I always insisted on wiping my butt, even when I wasn't capable. Somebody else rubbing a piece of toilet paper between my cheeks always made me uncomfortable. Guess I'm just crazy like that. 8-10-year-olds in freaking strollers in the mall. Are you kidding me? This child has legs. Why are you pushing it around? Either A, spoiled child, or B, lazy parenting. Regardless, terrible. My 2-year-old doesn't even ride in the stroller. The spoiled person was my own half brother, but there's a delicious piece of karma at the end that makes it all worth it. Backstory: my mother died when I was 1 year old and my father remarried a few years later. They had a son, and while the woman raising me stated that she treated all of the kids equally, I also have a sister, it was pretty obvious to everyone that it wasn't true. How spoiled was my half brother? While I had to pay for my final 2 years of college, a story too long to tell, my brother's very first car was a BMW M5. He could do no wrong, and even after wrecking the car twice, while high both times, they would just fix the car and give it back to him. One important fact too: while growing up, my parents kept us from seeing our grandparents, including my father's parents, who would have no sides as all of the children were their grandkids. Apparently, all of the grandparents thought that the whole situation was wrong and they had verbalized it many times. So 10 years ago, my brother fights with his wife, goes to a hotel, gets high on whatever and sets his hotel room on fire and dies of smoke inhalation. His wife, who never liked my parents very much, instantly bans them from seeing the grandchildren ever again. I'm gay, so no grandkids from me. Believe me, I've tried to get my BF pregnant, and my sister will not allow my parents to see her children, so poof, they had nothing. I'm a big believer in what goes around comes around, and oh boy, she got hers. A friend of mine was yelling at her dad to hurry up and buy her a washer dryer for her $1,000 a month apartment he paid for. We are no longer friends. Chris, this butthole piece of crap that lived up the street from me. Sucker got everything he wanted and would pout to get his way. If pouting didn't work, he would scold his parents. Freaking scold them like they were wrong. He brought that entitled cocksucker of an attitude with him in everything he ever did. He was real unhappy when life crap on his little "I am so great and I deserve everything" parade. I hated that sucker. Hey man, in my defense, they did get me the wrong color phone. I have a nephew who is a little too spoiled. He's about 6 right now. Reason of being spoiled: divorced parents. Father will buy anything to make him shut up. Mother can't stand him by his needs that the father gave him. He has lots of electronics and toys at a 6-year-old shouldn't have. Not sure what to do without him starting to cry in anger and getting pretty violent. I feel bad for his future classmates and such because I already assume he's going to be a bully to get things his way. Friend of mine is trying a new parenting style. Their 3-year-old gets to pick her bedtime. No naps. Chooses what she wants to eat. If she is misbehaving, maybe she gets a light scolding. It sounds nice on paper to some people, but so far the kid is a nightmare. Grandma changes TV channel. That's my show. Put IT back now. Throws things. Screams constantly. Complete emotional breakdown. When I visited, I had to leave the room because if I didn't, I might have slapped the child. This new parenting style seems a lot like not having a parenting style at all. Let's see. Around 13 or so years ago, my family was visiting family from out of town. My one cousin was playing his GameCube with us. It's been a while, so I can't exactly remember what caused this. but his parents asked him to do something and ignored them and kept playing. When they threatened to take away his GameCube, he started arguing with them, and I think they finally got too tired of arguing and just gave up. I asked him after, "Aren't you worried they will take it away from you later on for not listening to them?" He just told me that he doesn't need to listen to them, and if they tried taking it away from him, he would just break a bunch of their belongings until they gave it back to him. Quite a little crap he was. That is a sick little human being right there. The most spoiled kid I knew was the son of a wealthy Middle Eastern family at a religious camp. He had a sense of entitlement so huge that his parents shipped him a quarter of the way around the world to try to get rid of it. He didn't get any special treatment while there, of course, so it was fun watching his reactions to sleeping in the same cramped dorms and eating the same diarrhea-inducing food as everyone else. Elaborate, as this looks funny. These two kids, brothers about 13 and 11 at the time, would come into the ice cream shop where I worked and order practically everything we offered, and tell us to put it on their dad's tab. On occasion they'd also engage in a water fight next to the sink in the bathroom and leave a huge freaking mess. Once it was a soda bottle fight. We scrubbed sticky sugary fizzy drinks off the floor for an hour. Their parents were filthy rich and horribly unpleasant. I suppose we should have pitied the kids, but boy did we hate those entitled, spoiled, misbehaved little buttholes. A kid was screaming at his mom because her iPad was newer than his. This was while they were on a trip to the Caribbean. My cousin. That must be one of the most spoiled kids I know. Every year on Christmas he would get one new Nintendo DS, all year crapping his parents for more games. When my uncles said no, he went to his grandmother, and there he goes. Brand new games for the little kid. It got worse. A few years, maybe 2, his mother broke his laptop charger. He hit her. He hit his mother because of fricking PC. Now my aunt and uncle are divorced and I suspect it will be worse. I had this girl in my class once who used to say, "Better to be spoiled than neglected," and dang was she spoiled. It annoyed the heck out of me when she said that. If somebody's spoiled, it doesn't mean they're not neglected. When they aren't children anymore. How many adults in your life are not actually adults but are still just spoiled brats with 30+ years of experience? People who throw tantrums when they don't get what they want. Abuse others because they don't get what they want. Never take responsibility. Expect others to care for them without ever giving back. No manners, etc. The most heartbreaking is when I see spoiled adult children taking their kids out, screaming at them to behave, and then a minute later are throwing a fit at the barista or cashier. Yes, parents who are frustrated with their rude, bratty children and can't see that their children are mimicking their own bad behavior are infuriating. I work at a summer camp for rich kids. Here's a few quotes. "I am throwing a tantrum because I misplaced my iPad this morning, 6-year-old girl. You sound like my housekeeper, 6-year-old girl. Just don't marry a Mexican 7-year-old girl." When I was 6, my dad got a scholarship to study in the US. We're Malaysians, and my mom had to sell our car to accommodate our move there. We weren't particularly well off. She brought me to a shop to buy me jackets for winter, and after she already paid for the jacket, I saw a red one with a hoodie. So I said I didn't want the one she paid for, but the other one that I just saw. I started crying. Apparently I cried so hard that she gave in and bought me the red one. So I got 2 jackets that day. I'm 32 now, and every time I think about this, I feel the urge to slap my 6-year-old self. Sorry, Mom. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.